All right, welcome. Tonight, we're going to look at how the legislative reform, how the People's Congress, the Phoenix Congress will work as part of Building America 4.0. As always, like to start these meetings off by reciting the preamble to the Constitution to remind us of our duties as Americans. And you're welcome to unmute and join me if you like. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Those are the 5 duties that drive the American Union. Now, this, as we talked about, this is part of a Gandhian constructive program. We're addressing many issues in the United States. One integrated program of solutions. Stage 1 is the 30-day Gandhi challenges, self-improvement. Stages 2 and 3 address social and electoral reform, with the Fast for Peace in the American Union. And stage 4 is the Phoenix Congress addressing legislative reform. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, the Phoenix Congress builds on those first 3 stages. It is made up of American Union organizers. They're the ones who can become delegates to the Phoenix Congress and work on crafting legislative policy. In addition to being organizers, delegates commit to sobriety during the sessions and the Fast for Peace. And for members who don't want to go through all these hurdles, but still want to have their say in directing policy, individual members can vote in a given month by observing the fast as a way of opting in. So all members have the ability to participate, and those who self-select can take on these greater roles and responsibilities. Tonight, the 3 main topics we're going to talk about is how an idea gets to the president's desk under this model, the how and the who of voting on policies, and the parliamentary procedure of congressional action. And so first, how does an idea get to a president's desk? If you're a member of the American Union and you're like, you know what? So I was reading an article last night about the shortage of doctors that we have in the United States. And it turns out that Congress put a cap on the number of Medicare-funded residency spots. They capped it back in 1997 and then at 100,000, and they've only lifted it to 40,000, even though the population has increased by 62 million people since that time. I think Congress ought to lift that cap. Okay, once you've identified the problem to be solved, you can put that idea out there in discussion forums and try and find a seated delegate who will sponsor it as a specific proposal to the 2024 legislative package. Once you have a sponsor, form an investigative panel. And so this is a voluntary, self-selected group, people who are interested in solving this problem of not having enough doctors in the United States. We'll look at this. What are the costs of opening up these more residency spots? What are the reasons for keeping it low, if any? Look into these things, investigate the problem, and develop a language for a legislative solution. Now, when these investigative panels are formed, they get assigned to a policy committee and a subcommittee. We said the interested delegates will investigate the problem and draft legislation. They're going to present that to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee will decide whether or not it should be recommended to the full. That's the way that works. All right. So assuming that the subcommittee says, yes, this is a good idea, I think this should be included in the 2024 package, they're going to recommend that to the full committee. And the full committee is going to review the proposal and make a report. This report's going to go to the entire People's Congress. It's set up 3 delegates per congressional district, so about 1,300 members potentially, and all of whom are not going to have time to read all the little nuts and bolts of every little thing. And this is why we have policy committees who will view the details, will specialize on different areas and aspects, and make a report for the whole Congress to approve. And so the full Congress will vote on the committee report. Again, qualified members will be able to vote their one vote for themselves. They'd like to opt in a given month. And if the committee report recommends that the proposal is be included, we'll integrate it into the 2024 legislative package. Now, once all of these different proposals are put together, it'll be published and sent to Congress. Final offer on September 21st, 2024. And that'll give the whole country more than 3 weeks to look at it and analyze it and decide whether or not they want to support these legislative proposals. That culminates with the October 15th Fast for Peace. And when 3.5% of the electorate commits to pooling their votes behind demanding immediate passage of this legislation, we will have the leverage over Congress to control the balance of power in Washington, to persuade them to pass the legislation within 10 days in exchange for their reelection. President Biden will then have until October 30th to sign the legislation. And then we've rallied Americans together around solutions, around solving America's problems instead of just finger pointing. And America can celebrate a peaceful election in 2020. That's the basic model. It's a little different than what you learned on Schoolhouse Rock, because instead of having to buy political influence in Washington, D.C., by coming together as a union of voters, we can collectively bargain so that all of us come out ahead in 2024. All right, next let's talk about the how and the who of voting on policies. I want to emphasize again that these are parallel government structures. They have no legal authority. Unlike the Congress of the United States, Phoenix Congress cannot pass laws, but it can draft legislation, and that's what we do. Our authority comes from the leverage of being a union of swing voters. That's our legal authority. As Americans, we have the ability to vote in elections, and we have the ability to work together to accomplish great things. Basic membership in the American Union it's just $5 a month to the PAC, and a good faith pledge to vote together in the 2024 elections. Our moral authority, however, comes from service and from the sacrifice of the Fast for Peace. It's that shared self-sacrifice that gives us the moral authority to steer America in a more positive direction, guide us back toward those constitutional duties that are enumerated in the preamble. Now, any member of the American Union, they can work their way across up the levels of membership with self-improvement challenges. Again, where our existing power structure is largely based on where the more money you have, the more influence that you have. This parallel structure is based on this is entirely self-selected, how much influence, how much effort you want to put into improving yourself and serving America and the American Union. Basic members, everybody starts off as a basic member, become qualified members, stewards, organizers, delegates, and seated delegates. We've talked about organizers in a previous, I think 2 weeks ago. Tonight, we're going to talk a little more about qualified members and delegates. Now, the American Union uses liquid democracy, delegative democracy, instead of representative democracy. And what we have now is you've got a congressional district, and come election day, whichever candidate gets the plurality of the vote, doesn't even have to be a majority, is elected, and they represent everyone. And so if you're in the minority, or if you voted for a losing candidate, then you don't get the representation that you wanted. That's representative democracy. And it worked okay at the end of the 18th century when the framers wrote this, because 95% of the country was farmer. And so you had a much narrower set of interests when your constituency is 95% farmers. However, in America today, we have a much more diverse economy, much more diverse interests. And so delegative democracy ensures that all members are able to delegate their voting power to people who will act in ways that they want to see things done. Basic members, as we said, anybody can be a basic member. You must be an American citizen. You have to be 18 of legal voting age by the time of the next general election. So if you're 17, and you're not eligible to vote yet, but you're going to be able to vote in 2024 in the general election, you can become a member of the American Union and pool your votes and commit to pooling your vote to address societal problems. And of course, the good faith pledge to vote with the American Union. That $5 a month, besides generating some money for the PAC, reduces the possibility of foreign interference. It's a little hard for Russian trolls to use American credit cards each month to try and infiltrate the American Union, and it ensures that people are putting a little bit of skin in the game, a non-zero amount. And now all basic members get one vote that they can assign to different delegates, and they can divide it up into hundredths and divide it 1/100th to 100 different delegates. They can give the whole thing to one person, or however they want to split it up. And different delegates from around the country and in their congressional district will offer them options for, we'll be interested in gaining their voting power. After each month, when they've assigned their voting power, their proxies to representatives on the different questions that are voted on, they'll be able to see how their proxies voted, so they can see if they are being represented the way that they want. They can generally reassign these proxies whenever they want, but they get locked in on the 13th of each month until the monthly session of the Congress is concluded. Qualified members are the basic members who also participate in the Fast for Peace. As we've said before, the fast is optional. It is not required to be part of the American Union, but the Fast for Peace is the buy-in. Again, it's that non-zero amount. It's a demonstration of the willingness to give something up. And that's essential to compromise, which is what this legislative package requires. Those who are willing to observe the fast, to add to our moral authority, and to say, look, I could have had other things, right? I could have had food today, but I chose to give them up. Also demonstrate they're willing to bring that attitude to this legislative package. I could have held out for something more, but I'm willing to give some things up. I'm willing to compromise because America is worth saving. Qualified members can also be stewards. Stewards collect voting power, assign it to delegates around issues. So if you're very concerned about environmental issues, you can try and organize a block of voting power to give to delegates when environmental issues are being voted on. Stewards, however, cannot vote these voting powers. Only delegates can vote other people's votes. So stewards have to assign their voting power to delegates each month. Otherwise, it just counts as an abstention. Doesn't. As I said, qualified members can vote their one vote on issues in the calendar. If they want to opt in a given month, the Fast for Peace is the qualifier for voting in a given month. Again, demonstrating that willingness to compromise. And as we said before, qualified members can submit legislative proposals. Those ideas like lifting the cap on Medicare-funded residency spots. All right, moving up to delegates. Delegates qualify by being American Union organizers who have recruited 3+ members and had and observe sobriety while Congress is in session. Just to recap the qualifications for American Union organizers, it's a donation of $25 a month or more to the PAC, completion of a 30-day challenge, which includes a month of sobriety and 2 24-hour fasts. Organizers complete that once per year, and delegates at least twice per year, at least one in the last 6 months. And so again, this comes back to leading by example, saying, look, we can build a better America. And the organizers and the delegates are people who are willing to lead by example in doing so. Delegates can receive the proxies from members. So if you're a basic member and you know a delegate who's really good on those environmental policy issues you care about, they can assign their vote, give their proxy to you. And as a delegate, you get data on whose proxies you hold and the date of the assignment. This sort of to address transparency issues where if somebody's trying to influence you as a delegate and be like, hey, you've got my proxy, I want you to vote this way on this issue, you're able to see how much voting power they've assigned you and when, to make sure that they didn't just move a little bit over to you the day before in order to try and influence you. And so people who have entrusted you as a delegate with voting power for longer periods of time would be the people that you would probably weight their opinions more. Delegates that hold proxies can reassign them to other people or to caucuses, to stewarded groups. So proxies can be further proxied. They don't have to end at delegates, although they could. And you can assign those either in a fixed number of votes or as a percentage of your voting power. The proxies are locked in on the 13th of each month. Participation in the fast is what qualifies the delegates to vote in a given month. And in full sessions of the Phoenix Congress, all delegates in good standing that have qualified that month, they can vote all the proxies they control, with questions before the body being decided by a majority vote of proxies, not delegates that are cast. So using a simple example, if you have 3 people, one of whom holds 7 proxies and 2 others who each hold 3 that are representing 13 members of the American Union, well, the person who holds the voting power for 7 members is the majority vote. So it doesn't matter how many delegates vote in full sessions of the Phoenix Congress. It's their voting power. And so it is this liquid democracy that enables all members to have representation for their opinions, for their voice. Delegates get to vote on all those issues in the calendars, and delegates can receive proxies. However, not all delegates are seated in the Phoenix Congress. For that, 3 per congressional district. This is specifically an odd number so that, for example, we can think of current congressional districts, right, that tilt heavily towards one party or another. And so this, having 3 per district, you might end up with 2 delegates who tend, tend towards Republican side, 1 per Democrat, or vice versa. But it helps ensure that more diversity in the in the delegates, the seated from each congressional district. These seated delegates are assigned to a policy committee and subcommittees. They can express a preference, and leadership will try and give them the respect to that. We talked about the investigative panels earlier. Those are completely voluntary, but serving on the policy committees are assigned to ensure a good that they stay balanced. Talked about seated delegates can sponsor these legislative proposals, the investigative panels. Serving on a policy committee, they are responsible for reviewing legislative proposals and making recommendation to the full Congress. We just talked about how proxy voting, liquid democracy, is used in the full Congress, but when it comes to these smaller groups, the policy committees and the subcommittees, it's not weighted by proxy. You survey the members, and it's one seated delegate, one vote is how the committee report will go. And going back to our basic example a minute ago, if you have 3 people, one with 7 proxies and 2 others with 3, you can see how the people, the 2 with 3 proxies could be like, why should we participate at all? Because whatever we do is irrelevant. We're going to get, we're going to get outvoted. And you hope you wouldn't see that attitude, that you'd still have people be driven to ensure that we produce the best possible outcome possible. In these smaller scenarios, it is one seated delegate, one vote for deciding, for making decisions. When it comes to the full Congress, though, seated delegates are the ones who can debate the issues and raise questions. These sessions of the Congress will be live streamed, and so seated delegates will be able to debate and raise questions. Other delegates, other members can submit questions for seated delegates to consider, but that's up to the discretion of seated delegates, whether or not to bring them. Seated delegates can also introduce amendments to the main legislative package. Those are the duties and responsibilities of seated delegates. Now, the way that they're selected is, again, 3 per congressional district, and it's the ones who hold the most proxies. Calculate the first of every month. Essentially, it's a 1-month term, and if at the middle of the month, remember you lock in amount of proxies that people hold by the 14th of the month. If you realize that the top 3 proxy holders in a district have changed, that puts the 3 sitting seated delegates on notice that they've got until the first of the month to shore up their support or lose their seat. So that's the seat number. The distribution of seated delegates can change the first of each month. They're essentially 1-month terms. So there are different proposals when it comes to this in liquid democracy. The purpose here is to reduce gamesmanship, that trying to switch people's proxies right before an important vote to try and catch your opponent by surprise. Trying to be in the American Union, this is all built on principles of nonviolence. So truth is important, and so try and discourage those sneaky tactics. So that's how we calculate the seated delegates. It's also important to note that when you're counting up the number of proxies that a delegate holds, you count them so that a majority comes from within the district. So if you've got 7.5 proxies from within your district and 19.5 from without your district, the extra 12 outside your district don't count. They only count up to the number that you hold from within the district. And so this is to prevent people with large national audiences who don't connect with the local population from being able to sweep into a seat. It ensures that the local people who live in a congressional district support the seated delegates. And just to reiterate, all the delegates in good standing get to vote all the proxies, even if they're not seated. That doesn't matter. The seated position comes with the additional responsibilities of being able to debate, raise questions, and serving on policy committees, things like that. But when it comes to actually deciding the issues, all delegates who hold proxies can vote. And again, in the full session, the total number of proxies, the total number of proxies is equal to the total number of members. The member gets 1 vote. Questions are decided by a majority of the voting power that has been distributed by. Seated delegates, investigative panels. Again, those are voluntary. Encourage people to organize around whatever issues are important, to look into them and find legislative solutions to the problems that they've identified, to a subcommittee first and then the full committee. Panels, again, use surveying, 1 member, one one vote. It's not weighted by proxies. That's how they make their decisions. A little bit about the full sessions of the Phoenix Congress. The calendar for each month's session will be made available on the first of each month. Again, that's also when the 3 delegates per congressional district will be, 3 seated delegates per congressional district will be identified. So on the first of the month, you'll have an idea what's being voted on this. These sessions are virtual only. They'll begin on the 16th of each month and they'll be live streamed. Again, participation so it gives everyone the first half of the month to make sure that they know what's being voted on if they want, and decide whether qualified members might decide to pull their vote, pull their proxies and vote themselves on a temporary basis if there's an issue that's important to them. Of course, the FASTRA piece on the 15th is what qualifies members to vote. So those who want to weigh in, that's the opt-in. Again, seated delegates are the ones who can address the body and make motions. And again, all delegates can vote. The number of proxies held is public information, updated the first of the month in the calendar, and again, after they're locked in on the 14th of the month. A couple special circumstances that might arise. There could be special elections, up or down votes on separate questions, that could generate a unique set of proxies. So every American Union member could assign those differently. Stewards, we talked about this briefly, stewards can be assigned proxies to pool votes around different issues or causes like environmental reform. And their role is focused on bringing together interested parties. It's not the legislative minutia. They bring together the parties and then they throw that combined voting power to delegates. All the proxies have to be assigned each month. And similar to that, caucuses can be formed by delegates to pool their votes around different issues or causes. So those are a couple of different things. All right, timetable for development of the 2024 legislative package. Later this year, the Phoenix Congress will start meeting and forming investigative panels, looking at the 2022 legislative package, developing a draft version of the legislative package to be published January 15th, 2024. This is a general list of demands. This is a draft version, and things can still change. Over the next 6 months, the Phoenix Congress will refine it, but as a general rule, you don't raise any new issues. Once you start a Satyagraha campaign and you commit to trying to pursue the general rule, no new issues can be raised. Once you start a Satyagraha campaign, commit yourself to persuade people to the justness of your cause. You can't change the issues as you go along. So once people in 2024, once members of Congress see this list of demands, they'll know what it is that the solutions that we're proposing as a way to de-escalate the 2024 election. August 1st, after the Phoenix Congress has polished that list of demands, that draft legislation, we'll submit that legislation to Congress and the candidates. Again, this is a concrete proposal. These aren't nebulous ideas like healthcare reform now. This is very specific legislative proposals, specific changes to the United States Code. Again, things like lifting the cap on Medicare-funded residency spots to increase the numbers of doctors. So very specific proposals submitted to Congress, and it's up to Congress what they want to do with it. They may hold hearings. They can propose amendments. Look, this is what it'll take to get my vote. Instead of lifting the cap from 140,000, we're not going to let it go higher than 500,000. Okay. And so they can propose these kind of amendments through Labor Day. Now, Congress can also choose to ignore this. Congress may go on vacation in August and do nothing at all because they're more concerned about getting themselves reelected than they are in addressing America's problems. It's up to Congress. We'll have to wait and see what they do. But somebody's got to do the heavy lifting. Somebody's got to craft these solutions. And so we, the people, have the power. We, the people, can crowdsource this. We, the people, can write the legislation that will help us build a better America, build America 4.0. We're going to give them about 5 weeks through Labor Day. And there are through Labor Day. After that, we'll take amendments into consideration. We'll look at different proposals and decide what we want to do, polish it up, and make, as I said before, September 21st, 2024, final take it or leave it offer. Submit it to the American people and give everyone a chance to see what's in the bill and decide what side of history they want to be on. We have the opportunity to pool our votes, to come together and collectively bargain and win us a better social contract. So a quick sketch. The Phoenix Congress serves as the third chamber of Congress. So again, we could be a people's legislative body, and we submit one proposal up or down to Congress, and the two chambers can decide they will accept it and pass it on to the White House, or they will decline it and let it go to the trash heap. That is their decision, take it or leave it. And so we'll find out in October 2024 what they decide to do. And in November 2024, we will see the consequences of the decisions that members of Congress made. All right, last, I just want to cover the parliamentary procedure of congressional action, because sometimes you get this question, what's the purpose of, drafting this legislation? Because Congress is just going to mess it up, or they're going to make changes or things like that. No, that's one, that's not the offer, and two, it's not necessary for them to do that. Members of Congress are welcome to join the American Union and participate in the Phoenix Congress and weigh in as the legislative package is crafted. But at the end of the day, they have the ability to hold an up or down vote on this legislative package. And the way that they do that is the way we've seen Congress do many times, where they form a committee of Congress. Leadership takes the text of the bill that's in the committee of Congress, and they put whatever they've worked out in there. And that committee conference report goes to both the House and Senate for a straight up or down vote. It cannot be amended. The House and Senate can vote it up, or they can vote it down. Those are their only two choices. A little bit of an oversimplification. They can also vote to return it, to re-refer it to the committee conference, stuff like that. But they cannot amend it. They can vote it up or they can vote it down. And if both of them agree, that's it. It goes to the president's desk. And then that's how we're going to decide which candidates, which incumbents to be endorsed with this block of swing voters who will be on the American Union slate in November 2024. Again, this is a Satyagraha campaign. The goal is to persuade Congress. We want to help them succeed in building America 4.0. We want to end poverty, end mass incarceration, and end the endless wars. And Congress is mired in gridlock. Lobbyists have far too much influence on the legislative process to the benefit of their special interests. And as a parallel structure, we can go around all of that mess. We can write good, clean legislation outside the swamp of Washington and deliver it to them in 2024 for an up or down vote. You learn more about at AnAmericanUnion.com, become a basic member, and help us build America 4.0.